They say the devil is in the details. For me, he was in the silence. The kind that stretched before the storm, thick with unspoken promises and unspoken threats. I'd seen 1,000 of these silences, in bombed-out market squares, in blood-soaked interrogation rooms, in the cold, dead eyes of men who'd forgotten humanity. Felt the pressure building behind my eyes, the tremor in my hands that wasn't fear, but anticipation. Tonight it was different. Tonight, the silence wasn't a prelude. It was a cage. I pressed the trigger. A whisper of a click, a single, sharp crack shattering the suffocating quiet of the derelict warehouse. One shot. Clean. The target, a ghost of a man I'd once known, slumped to the concrete floor, a widening crimson stain blooming on his chest. This wasn't the mission. This wasn't the plan. My gut screamed. A high-pitched whine from the worn-out monitor in the corner ripped through the lingering echo. Then a single, stark image flashed. The faces of my family, superimposed over a ticking countdown. 0, 0, 0, 3, 2, 1. The air sucked out of the room an instant before the concussion wave hit. Not from my shot. From theirs. The entire eastern wall behind me vaporized in a deafening roar of concrete, rebar, and twisted metal, hurling me forward. Glass rained down, not from windows, but from unseen monitors exploding around me, shrapnel slicing the air. My ears rang with an agonizing shriek. The metallic tang of blood filled my mouth. I choked on dust and pulverized drywall, vision blurring through the chaos. They knew. They'd known every move, every breath, since the moment I stepped off that plane. This wasn't an extraction. This was an extermination. And the target wasn't the man I'd just killed. It was me, and everyone I ever loved. The game was over. Or perhaps it had just truly begun. The brutal awakening rips through Alara's consciousness. A visceral jolt of pure terror. Her lungs burn, sucking in air as if pulled from a drowning abyss. Every fiber of her being screams, a symphony of remembered agony. The snap of bone, the searing heat of a laser blast, the metallic tang of her own blood. Disoriented strangers stir around her, their eyes fluttering open to a sterile metallic room, confusion etched onto their faces. They blink, stretch, utterly oblivious to the horror that just clawed its way back into her mind. She lunges forward, a strangled, primal sound tearing from her throat, fingers clawing at the air. No, not again. They're coming. Her voice, raw and desperate, cracks against the metallic silence, met only by blank stares and annoyed murmurs. They see a hysteric. She sees her inescapable, recurring nightmare. Her isolation deepens, a chilling weight, as the steel door at the far end of the room begins its ominous, low hiss. Alara's frantic pleas escalate, her words tumbling out in a desperate torrent, a futile attempt to make the others understand the impending, unimaginable doom. You don't get it. This has happened before. We have to move. Her voice is hoarse, pleading, yet their confusion hardens into impatient dismissal. Then, a klaxon's ear-splitting shriek slices through the air, painting the room in flashing, angry red. The sound is an internal clock for Alara, a horrifying confirmation. The heavy, reinforced steel door, already hissing, now grinds open with an agonizing slowness, accompanied by a chilling puff of steam. The group's faces, once skeptical, drain of color, their confusion morphing into stark, undeniable fear. From the deepening shadows of the opening breach, a towering, armored figure emerges, the Guardian. Its silhouette a harbinger of brutal, efficient death. Its presence a cold, hard knot in Alara's gut. The Guardian's voice, synthesized and devoid of emotion, cuts through the klaxon's wail. The core, surrender it. Its gaze falls upon the pulsating, ethereal device at the room's center. Panic ripples through the group, but one man, Marcus, a former soldier whose hardened eyes momentarily flash with a familiar, dangerous resolve, lunges forward. He wields a makeshift weapon, a length of pipe, yelling defiance. Alara watches, every agonizing second replaying in her mind before it even happens. The Guardian moves with impossible speed, a blur of practiced lethality. Marcus's clumsy attack is met with brutal, precise efficiency. A quick, sharp crack of bone, the pipe clattering to the floor, and Marcus is disarmed. His arm twisted at an unnatural angle, crumpled and gasping in pain. The Guardian stands over him, unyielding, its metallic presence an overwhelming, unchallengeable force. Another loop, another casualty, the same horrifying script unfolding. This exact moment Elara knows. Marcus's defeat. The Guardian's unyielding advance toward the core. This is where it always leads. A surge of desperate, bone-deep certainty compels her. The core isn't just a prize. It's the key. With a guttural cry, Elara launches herself forward. A last, desperate gamble, diving across the cold, metallic floor. Her fingers stretch, aching, reaching for the pulsating heart of the room. A desperate prayer in her eyes. Time seems to slow, every second a torturous eternity. The Guardian's arm snaps up. A blinding flash of energy erupts from its weapon, aimed directly at her. A searing pain explodes through her chest, her body slamming against the ground. The precious core just millimeters from her fingertips. The room spins, darkness encroaches. Her last breath a choked gasp as the digital clock on the wall flickers, then resets to 60.00. The loop completes, Elara's agony a fleeting echo. Gasping, Elara jolts awake again, the familiar surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. But this time it's different. No disorientation, no confusion. Just a terrifying, crystalline clarity. Every memory of every brutal death, every futile attempt, every word spoken in the previous loop, plays back with chilling precision. It's not a nightmare. It's a living, breathing reality she's stuck in. Her eyes snap to a small, almost imperceptible scratch on her left forearm, a detail she deliberately created in her last life. It's there. Then, her gaze darts to the digital clock, counting down from 60.00, just as it had countless times before. A cold dread settles over her, more profound than any fear of death. She isn't just dying. She's trapped. A chilling echo confirms her worst fear, cementing the unbearable weight of her inescapable reality. Driven by a desperate, burgeoning hope that this loop might be different, Elara throws herself into action, attempting to rewrite the cruel script. This time, she'll stop Marcus before he makes his foolish, valiant charge. She grabs his arm, a furious whisper tearing from her lips. "Don't! It's useless!" He stares at her, bewildered, shrugging her off. Next, she tries to hide the core, wrestling with the heavy device, but it's bolted down, unyielding. She pivots, lunging at Lyra, shouting with renewed urgency, "The door! We need a plan now!" But her words are too fast, too frantic, dismissed as hysterical. Each desperate maneuver, each tiny alteration, proves utterly futile. The klaxon blares, the door hisses open, the Guardian emerges, and Marcus, despite her warnings, still stands his ground, a mirror image of countless failed attempts. The loop's unbreakable boundaries press down on her, an invisible, crushing weight. Having exhausted her efforts to alter the initial moments, Elara now observes. She takes cover, eyes narrowed, studying the Guardian with a chilling, almost clinical detachment as it executes its grim task. Its movements are not merely efficient. They are inhumanly precise. The exact angle of its approach, the precise trajectory of its arm as it disarms Marcus, the unwavering focus on the temporal core, every action is identical down to the millimeter. It's not a soldier making tactical decisions. It's a programmed entity, a clockwork assassin. The realization solidifies, cold and unsettling. There's no emotion, no improvisation, no deviation. It is an algorithm given metallic form, repeating its function flawlessly, tirelessly. This insight is a new layer of dread, revealing not just a recurring event, but a meticulously engineered sequence, a puzzle piece in a larger, darker design, terrifying in its absolute predictability. In one desperate, fleeting loop, just moments before the Guardian makes its inevitable entrance, Elara lunges for the temporal core, not to grab it, but to touch. Her fingertips brush against its surface, and a sudden, blinding surge of raw energy pulses through her. It's not painful, but overwhelming, washing over her senses. Fragmented images flash through her mind. Alien landscapes, complex geometric symbols, echoes of voices, a whisper of a distant, impossible future. A flood of sensations, cold, vast, ancient, inundates her, offering a fleeting, enigmatic glimpse into the core's true nature, its immense, unknown power. She recoils, gasping, stunned, as if she's seen infinity in a heartbeat. The brief connection leaves her shaken, but also ignites a spark of something new, not just desperation, but a flicker of hope, or perhaps, a deeper, more dangerous understanding, just as the door begins its familiar, dreaded hiss. The repetition was a cage, but it also offered a twisted form of power. I saw their fears, their predictable tremors. Each loop, their reactions were a practiced choreography of terror. But this time, a new strategy formed in the echoing silence of my resets. An ally. My eyes found Kai, the youngest, his face a canvas of raw, unmasked anxiety. He was a perfect target, a fragile spark in the encroaching darkness. As the steel door began its inevitable hiss, I moved, predicting his exact flinch, his panicked scramble. "Hey!" I barked, my voice cutting through the rising panic, my hand shooting out, firm and unwavering, offering a lifeline he hadn't even realized he needed. It was a desperate gamble, a subtle manipulation, but trust, even manufactured, was a weapon I desperately needed to wield. The Guardian's breach was a symphony of destruction, a brutal ballet I'd witnessed countless times. This loop, I poured every fiber of my being into Kai, screaming warnings over the shriek of tearing metal and the cacophony of panicked cries. "Left!" I roared, my voice raw, pointing frantically away from the gaping maw of the Guardian's weapon. His eyes, wide with primal fear, met mine for a fleeting second. He saw my conviction, felt the urgency. But terror is a primal beast, and it blinds. He hesitated, a fatal fraction of a second, then instinctively veered right, directly into the Guardian's scorching blast. The sickening thud of his body hitting the wall, the acrid smell of ozone. It was all too familiar. My stomach churned. Changing the small strokes meant nothing. The canvas remained the same. The core, the pulsing heart of this digital purgatory. After countless cycles of futile warnings, I turned my focus inward, on the cold, alien structure that anchored our torment. Loop after loop, I became an archaeologist of its surface, my fingers tracing the impossibly smooth lines, searching for any anomaly. This time, my touch lingered, exploring the subtle ridges beneath the polished veneer. There, a series of impossibly intricate symbols, like a forgotten language etched into its seamless casing, pulsed with a faint, internal light. Not a power source, then. Not just console. An interface. A door to answers. A tremor of something akin to hope, fragile but persistent, ignited within the desolate chambers of my resolve. My meticulous observations hadn't gone unnoticed. Marcus, with his perpetually furrowed brow and cynical gaze, had been watching. Each loop, my uncanny predictions, my frantic, knowing glances, had chipped away at his composure. This time, as I edged closer to the core, his patience snapped. His voice, guttural and laced with accusation, ripped through the room. "What the hell is wrong with you, Elara? You're talking like you've seen this before." He towered over me, his shadow falling like a shroud. The weight of his suspicion, the raw fear in his eyes, was a new kind of threat. "You're losing it, aren't you? Mad." His words were blunt, designed to wound, to break. But I couldn't break. Not now. Not when I was so close. Amidst Marcus's furious accusations, a quiet presence registered. Lyra, always in the periphery, a silent shadow. While Marcus vented his suspicions, Lyra remained still, her gaze unervingly steady. Her expression was a blank slate, but the slightest tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible tilt of her head, spoke volumes. She wasn't just hearing Marcus. She was dissecting my responses, sifting through the chaos for patterns, for truth. There was no judgment, no fear, just an almost scientific curiosity. A flicker of intrigue in the depths of her gaze suggested she saw more than just insanity. She saw a narrative, a puzzle, and perhaps a potential player in a game only I knew we were playing. The core's interface demanded more time, precious seconds I didn't have. A brutal truth settled: to gain, I had to lose. To survive, I had to die. A new plan, born of desperation and cold calculation, solidified. As the Guardian burst through, its weapon charging, I didn't run, didn't scream. My eyes locked onto its optical sensor, a defiant spark in the face of oblivion. I took a deliberate step forward, exposing myself a living target. "Come on," I challenged, my voice a whisper of steel. The Guardian's blast ripped through the air, scorching, all-consuming. The reset was instantaneous, brutal, and utterly necessary. Each death bought me another breath, another chance, another fraction of a second closer to the truth. The extra seconds were a lifeline. My hands, guided by instinct honed through countless loops, moved with practiced precision. The core symbols, now a familiar map, led me to a barely visible seam. My fingers probed, searching for a latch, a switch, anything that wasn't solid metal. The pressure was immense. The Guardian's arrival an omnipresent ticking clock. Then, a subtle click. A barely audible hiss as a narrow panel recessed, revealing a dark cavity. Inside, bathed in a faint internal blue light, lay a small crystalline data slate. Its surface pulsed with cryptic symbols, a silent promise of knowledge. A tangible link to something beyond this room, beyond the loop. The breath I hadn't realized I was holding finally escaped, ragged and hopeful. The data slate was a puzzle, shattered across time. Loop after loop, I pored over its fragmented logs, a digital archaeology of despair. Each reset was a chance to decipher another line, another glyph, slowly piecing together the terrifying truth. The room wasn't just a prison. It was a temporal stabilizer test chamber. The core wasn't just its heart. It was dangerously unstable. And then, the final, chilling revelation. A forgotten operator, hinted at in corrupted files, someone once responsible for this hell, now vanished, leaving us trapped in this cyclical torment. The reality settled, cold and unforgiving. We weren't just victims, we were experiments. And the architect of our nightmare was still out there, or worse, never truly left. The flickering terminal finally yielded its secrets, a stream of encrypted logs slowly decrypting before my desperate eyes. The Guardian, it wasn't a predator. It was a failsafe, a cold, unfeeling protocol designed to reset the chamber, to purge the timeline, if the core's temporal signature became too erratic. Or, more chillingly, if the operator, me, deviated too far from its intended path. It wasn't trying to kill us. It was trying to fix me. This wasn't a prison. It was a complex, self-correcting mechanism. The terror that had fueled my every sprint, every warning, now morphed into a twisted understanding. The enemy wasn't malicious. It was merely doing its job, responding to my perceived failure. The realization hit like a physical blow, leaving me gasping in the sterile hum of the chamber, the weight of the universe's order suddenly resting on my shoulders. Armed with this terrifying new knowledge, I knew I couldn't face this alone. Lyra, she was the one. My pulse hammered as I approached her, the air thick with unspoken fear. In precisely 11 seconds, I whispered, my voice raw with urgency. Marcus will trip over the loose floor panel near the far console. He'll drop the energy cell he just picked up. Look. Her eyes, skeptical and wary, darted to Marcus. 10 seconds. 9. The digital clock above us ticked its relentless countdown. Lyra's gaze flickered back to me, suspicion etched on her face. Then, exactly as predicted, a clatter echoed across the room. Marcus cursed, stooping to retrieve the rolling energy cell. Lyra's eyes widened, a flicker of bewildered, hesitant trust replacing the skepticism. It was a gamble, a desperate plea for belief, and it had worked. The alliance, born of a chilling prophecy, was tentative but real. Our first coordinated move felt less like strategy, more like a prayer hurled into a maelstrom. Marcus, bless his reckless heart, became our human shield. Now, I yelled, and he launched himself, a blur of motion, directly at the Guardian, a futile but necessary distraction. The Guardian, predictably, pivoted, its targeting laser locking onto him, a crimson beam slicing through the air. In that precious, split-second window, Lyra laid down suppressive fire, energy pulses ricocheting off the Guardian's plating, buying me scant milliseconds. My fingers flew across the core's advanced interface, the symbols blurring into a desperate code. I almost had it. A faint hum vibrated beneath my fingertips. But the Guardian, faster than thought, swiveled, its metallic arm lashing out, sending a concussive wave that slammed into the console, sparks showering, throwing me backwards. Partial success, crushing failure. The loop reset. Again. Each reset, each futile attempt, chipped away at my sanity, but also carved deeper into the core's enigma. It wasn't just a device. It demanded more than mere commands. It was sentient in a way, or perhaps a hungry. Fragmented logs, previously overlooked, hinted at a subconscious link, a required input or connection from the operator to stabilize its volatile temporal signature. It wasn't enough to simply interface with it. I had to become a part of it. A chill snaked down my spine. Had I been unknowingly tethered to this temporal engine all along? Was my own mind, my very existence, the unstable element it was constantly trying to correct? The room's sterile hum now felt like a living presence, a mechanical beast yearning for a piece of me, a silent demand for resonance. Desperate, I'd whispered a prophecy to Marcus, painting a heroic, if temporary, fate. He believed me. He had to. With a primal roar, Marcus launched himself at the Guardian, a living, breathing distraction. I saw the flash of the Guardian's energy weapon, a blinding white-hot discharge that enveloped him completely. His body crumpled, an inert husk, before the loop reset. It was a false alarm, a death that would be undone. Yet the weight of it crushed me. His sacrifice, a fleeting eternity of pain, bought us crucial seconds. Seconds I could never truly repay. The taste of ash filled my mouth. How many more times could I send someone to their temporary doom, knowing their fear, feeling their end, even if it wasn't permanent? The moral calculus of this loop was a torment far worse than any physical wound. Marcus's fleeting sacrifice granted me precisely 4.7 seconds. Not much, but enough. My hands, still trembling, flew across the core's interface, accessing a hidden diagnostic screen buried deep within its code. A complex, shimmering display materialized, resonance signature required. Beneath it, an intricate swirling pattern, alien yet eerily familiar. It wasn't just a password. It was a blueprint, a neurological signature. My neurological signature. The core wasn't looking for a key, but a reflection, a perfect match to the unique electrical patterns firing within my own brain. The realization was a jolt, connecting countless disparate thoughts, confirming the subconscious link. I wasn't just controlling the core. I was the core's anchor, its most vital component, the one thing that could stabilize or shatter this entire temporal construct. The room pulsed with newfound, terrifying purpose. The answer, when it came, was so absurdly simple, so utterly human, it almost made me laugh. Kai. His anxiety, his fidgeting, the erratic surges of his nervous system. It wasn't a weakness, it was a weapon. I observed him closely in a rapid-fire sequence of loops. When he was particularly agitated, the Guardian's targeting systems would inexplicably glitch, its crimson reticle flickering, briefly losing its lock. It wasn't a direct intervention, not a conscious act of sabotage, but a chaotic, unintentional disruption. His unique neurological quirks, his very discomfort, created a momentary blind spot in the Guardian's cold, unfeeling programming. The ultimate failsafe undone by a human tremor. It was a fragile vulnerability, a thread of hope woven into the fabric of our inescapable doom, and it was enough. We had a chance. The pieces were scattered, broken, but now, finally, they coalesced. Our final strategy, born of blood, logic, and desperate hope, was a symphony of chaos. Kai, positioned near the core, would be our unseen disruptor, his anxiety a shield, creating the critical targeting glitch. Then Marcus, brought back by another reset, now fully convinced of my chilling foresight, would launch his ultimate, final distraction, directly engaging the Guardian, buying precious, fatal seconds. Lyra, ever watchful, would provide cover fire, suppressing the Guardian's counterattacks, protecting the flanks. And I would use those agonizing seconds, those brave sacrifices, to reach the core, to input my neurological signature, to become the resonance chamber, to finally shatter this loop. Our lives, temporary though they were, hinged on this perfect, brutal execution. The room hummed with the electric tension of our last stand. The digital clock, a cruel countdown to oblivion, flickered as the minute began. A surge of desperate adrenaline coursed through Alara, igniting her every nerve. Beside her, Kai, hands shaking, slammed his fist onto the console, his nervous energy somehow creating the crucial glitch, a spark of defiance against the inevitable. With a guttural roar, Marcus, a whirlwind of muscle and fury, launched himself at the towering Guardian. Steel met flesh with a sickening thud, a brutal hand-to-hand struggle that bought them precious, agonizing seconds. Lyra, a phantom in the swirling dust and strobe light, provided covering fire, her suppressed weapon spitting rhythmic bursts, not to kill, but to divert, to disorient, to keep the monstrous automaton from fixing its gaze on Alara. Every breath was a gamble, every move a desperate prayer against a universe that had mocked them countless times before. This was not a fight for survival, it was a fight for a chance, a sliver of hope in an abyss of despair. Through the maelstrom of metal shrieks and desperate shouts, a tunnel of absolute focus narrowed around Alara. The world receded, blurring into a peripheral nightmare, as her gaze locked onto the temporal core. It pulsed, a silent beacon in the heart of the storm, its ethereal glow beckoning, demanding her attention. Her steps were a desperate dance between falling bodies and stray gunfire, each stride fueled by 1,000 forgotten deaths. She reached it, her hands hovering, trembling slightly above the intricate interface. She could feel it, a hum, a deep, resonant thrumming that vibrated through her very bones, the unique signature of temporal energy. This was it, the impossible convergence of countless failures, the one fragile chance to align herself, to become one with the device that had held them captive, to shatter the chains of time itself. The weight of every single loop, every scream, every desperate plea, rested on her fingertips. Then, with a shuddering breath that felt like the first in an eternity, Alara pressed her palm against the core's interface. A sudden, blinding white light erupted, engulfing the entire room, searing away the chaos, the fear, the very fabric of reality. It wasn't just light. It was pure energy, a torrent that coursed through her, connecting her neurological signature to the core with an agonizing, exquisite force. Time ceased to exist. She was no longer just Alara. She was a conduit, a vessel, a rapid-fire montage of memories, both intensely real and terrifyingly artificial, exploded within her mind. The acrid smell of gunpowder, the cold touch of a dying friend, a forgotten lullaby, a battle fought on a starship, the sterile glow of a laboratory, a voice whispering ancient warnings. The universe, vast and indifferent, downloaded itself into her consciousness, shattering and rebuilding her identity with every passing nanosecond. This wasn't merely a connection. It was an awakening. The blinding white light, a crescendo of pure energy, intensified to an unbearable pitch, swallowing everything, every sound, every thought, every last fragment of the brutal reality they had endured. Then, as suddenly as it began, it snapped to an absolute, profound black. Not the black of a power outage, but the void itself, utterly devoid of light, sound, or hope. For a beat, an eternity, nothing existed. Then, like a fragile illusion finally giving way, the familiar digital clock, that cruel arbiter of their eternal torment, shimmered into view, frozen at a defiant midnight. And with a soundless, impossible crack, it shattered, not into physical fragments, but a million shimmering, crystalline pixels, dissolving into the impenetrable darkness like forgotten dreams. The oppressive, soul-crushing sound of the loop resetting, the constant hum of their digital prison, was replaced by an eerie, unnerving silence. A silence so absolute, it spoke volumes of a monumental shift, a void where only terror had been before. Alara's eyes fluttered open, not to the harsh, sterile glow of the loop room, but to a soft, natural light that filtered through unseen vents. The air, for the first time in what felt like 1,000 lifetimes, felt crisp, clean, devoid of the metallic tang of blood and fear. She sat up slowly, her body aching, but her mind clear. Around her, Marcus, Lyra, and Kai stirred, groaning, their eyes blinking open with a shared, disoriented confusion. But this time it was different. A flicker of recognition, a dawning horror, then a profound, undeniable relief washed over their faces. They remembered, not just this loop but all of them, the infinite deaths, the futile warnings, the crushing despair. Their expressions were a complex tapestry of bewildered relief, quiet triumph, and the ghost of 1,000 nightmares, finally released from their cyclical prison. The weight of shared memory was tangible, a silent understanding passing between them. The Guardian, once an avatar of their inescapable doom, now lay still, utterly deactivated. Its formidable armor was cracked in places, a testament to Marcus's raw strength and Lyra's relentless barrages. Its menacing energy weapon, once charged with fiery destruction, was inert, a silent, hollow shell. It was no longer a threat, but a stark, metallic monument to the crushing system they had just impossibly overcome. Alara rose, her movements still stiff, and walked slowly towards the fallen behemoth. She reached out, her fingers gently touching its cool, metallic surface. The cold steel, once a source of terror, now felt strangely peaceful. It was a silent acknowledgement, a final, wordless understanding between predator and prey, now rendered equal in the aftermath. The air around it, once thick with the stench of ozone and fear, was now simply still, carrying only the faint scent of triumph and the promise of a future finally free from its shadow. The temporal core, the very heart of their prison, now pulsed with a steady, gentle light, no longer menacing, but radiating a calm, ethereal energy. It had served its purpose, fulfilling a function far beyond simple torment. From its luminous surface, a final holographic message began to project itself into the air, shimmering and coalescing before their astonished eyes. And then, a voice echoed through the room, clear and resonant. A voice Alara knew intimately, yet simultaneously felt alien to her current self. It was her own voice, from a forgotten past, explaining with a calm authority that the entire loop, every brutal death, every frantic warning, every cycle of despair, was a self-imposed simulation. A meticulously designed protocol, she explained, intended to awaken her dormant temporal abilities, to forge her through fire, to prepare her, specifically her, for a greater threat that still loomed unseen beyond their shattered reality. The holographic Alara continued, her voice resonating with an undeniable truth that stitched together every frayed nerve, every unanswered question. The message clarified their ultimate purpose. Alara was not merely a survivor, but a temporal anchor, a rare individual capable of manipulating and safeguarding entire timelines. The loop, her endless nightmare, was a training protocol, an accelerated crucible designed to unlock her full potential, to force her dormant abilities to the surface through sheer, repeated trauma. And the others, Marcus, Lyra, and Kai, they were not random victims. They were carefully selected catalysts, each chosen for their unique reactions, their strengths, their very essence, all precisely calibrated to help Alara remember, to adapt, and ultimately, to break free. The room, once a prison, was now revealed as a forge, and they, the unwitting components of a grander design, stood at the precipice of a new, terrifying, yet infinitely more meaningful reality. The world was not just bigger. It was woven from time itself, and Alara, finally, knew her place within it. For so long, this room had been everything. The beginning, the end, the endless repetition of pain. A steel cage, a digital prison, an inescapable echo chamber of death. But then the walls began to breathe. Not crumble, not explode, but shimmer, like heat haze distorting reality, then peeling back like a digital skin. What lay beyond was not the expected concrete or endless void, but a breathtaking, terrifying expanse. Gleaming chrome pathways stretched into the distance, holographic screens pulsed with alien data, and vast, humming machinery rose to impossible heights. The loop room, our tiny arena of terror, was merely a splinter, a forgotten cell within a colossal, silent metropolis of advanced technology. It was a revelation, a dizzying expansion of the nightmare. This wasn't just a prison. It was a factory, an entire world built around the very concept of our suffering. The true game had just begun, and its rules were infinitely more complex, its stakes astronomically higher than we could ever have imagined. The sheer scale threatened to paralyze, to drown us in its incomprehensible complexity. But in Alara's eyes, the terror had begun to transmute, not into resignation, but into a hardened resolve, a quiet fury that had been tempered by countless deaths. This wasn't just a new prison. It was a battlefield, a chance. She drew a breath, a silent affirmation of defiance, and took the first step. Her movement was deliberate, confident, forward into the gleaming, dangerous unknown. Behind her, Marcus, the pragmatist, swallowed hard but met her gaze, a flicker of unwavering trust cementing his decision. Lyra, the quiet observer, squared her shoulders, her fear transforming into a steely determination. Even Kai, the skeptic, felt the magnetic pull of Alara's conviction, his own purpose hardening. We were no longer victims clinging to the hope of rescue, no longer fragments broken by a relentless loop. We were a unit, stepping out of the shadows, unified by a shared enemy and Alara's impossible leadership. The journey through this metallic labyrinth had begun, and with it, the fight for a future we hadn't dared to dream possible. The dust finally settled, but the debris of my former life lay scattered everywhere. He lay there, the architect of this twisted betrayal, a sneer of defiance frozen on his face even in death. I'd taken him apart piece by agonizing piece, for what he did, for what he almost did to them. The final satellite feed crackled, a grainy image confirming it. My family, safe, shaken but alive. The extraction team finally breached the perimeter, their lights cutting through the gloom, their voices a distant, sterile echo. Too late to save the man I'd been forced to become in these past brutal hours, perhaps, but not too late to save the ghost of the man I could still be. I looked at my blood-soaked hands, at the wreckage of the world they'd made me destroy to save my own. The silence returned, not as a prelude, nor as a cage, but as a vast, echoing emptiness that swallowed the screams and the gunfire. They said I was free, but freedom tasted like ash, like the bitter tang of gunpowder, and it felt like a heavy shroud. I'd saved them, but I'd lost a part of myself in the process, a piece irrevocably shattered in the crucible of their war. The fight was over. This specific hell was behind me, but the war, the one inside, the one for my own soul, had only just begun. And I was now a weapon, honed by fire and betrayal, with nowhere left to point it but at the ghosts of my own making, forever condemned to walk between the shadows.